when someone stops making themselves available and doesn't apologize for it. These real boundaries are not gentle, and often boundaries are not gentle, but they are clear. And that clarity, that clearness can feel harsh to people who are counting on your ambiguity. Welcome to the Glow Up Revolution podcast, a podcast for overgivers, overachievers, and the strong ones in the room. We discuss everything from neuroscience-based burnout prevention to magic spells we can cast for upcoming job opportunities and everything in between. Welcome. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hello, and welcome back to the Glow Up Revolution podcast. I am your host, Megan Winkler, and today I am going to say something that might ruffle a few feathers in the wellness world, and I think it is high time to do so. Let's dive in. You ready? Okay. We've built an entire aesthetic around what healed is supposed to be like, what it's supposed to look like. It's supposed to be a soft voice, slow breath, for all genders, but especially for women. It's supposed to be gracious responses to people who have treated you badly. And this kind of perpetual gentleness that signals you're above it all and you've done the work. I have done the work. And I do not get ruffled. I do not express anger. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, is this idea of healing isn't actually healing. This image of like a totally zenned out, like it's fine, isn't healing. It's a performance. It is spiritual bypassing. And underneath it all, we are exhausted and we do not have time for this bullshit. So here's what we're going to do about it. Before we dig in, I want to acknowledge that the wellness space often sells us this goal that healing is to look like someone who doesn't get rattled, someone who responds instead of reacts, and someone who holds space and stays grounded. And as I'm saying all of this, I don't know if you're feeling it, but I certainly am. That it's like, wow, this image of like the divine feminine and the quietness and all of that really makes it comfortable for other people to be assholes. Yeah. And look, there's real value in nervous system regulation. Obviously, that's a big part of what I do. So I'm, of course, not dismissing that. And obviously, yes, I do think it is better to be able to respond instead of react. But sometimes that reaction is exactly what we need to understand where a boundary has been crossed for us. Sometimes that's exactly what the person on the receiving end of that reaction needs. Because sometimes people got to fix their shit. Somewhere along the way, the idea of having a regulated nervous system really morphed into this like being quiet and palatable and easy to be around. Like your feathers never get, rustled. They never get fluffed up. Nothing's ever out of place. You know, this kind of image of like a Gwyneth Paltrow-esque individual. And Gwyneth herself has a whole team, multiple teams of people to make sure she can still move about in those spaces in her linen pants and her beautiful beachy waves and be above it all, right? And if we're able to have a whole team of people or multiple teams of people around us to make sure that we can maintain that vibe, man, I love it for you. I really do. That is not my reality. There's also this idea that like, oh, a trigger is just another word for unhealed work. I've heard shit like this before. And the idea that if somebody's behavior bothers you, it's your nervous system's problem and it's your problem to solve. That the anger is data about you, not information about them. And kind of along this track, we've pathologicalized the very responses that have kept us alive, like as human beings, for millennia. It also puts the ownership of the bad behavior back on you. Like somebody's being an asshole, and it's putting that response that you have to them, which is completely natural and normal, on you as some sort of flaw. And if you ask me, that's some pretty fucked up patriarchal colonial bullshit. Yes, I'm cussing a lot in this episode. If you don't like it, you're obviously not my person. If you grew up in chaos, vigilance was necessary, and it was a form of bodily nervous system energetic intelligence. You learned to read the room. You learned to notice when energy shifted. You learned how to get out before things escalated. It was your nervous system doing its job beautifully. And now, as an adult, and this is just one example of this, you're being asked to dismantle it, soften it, quiet it down, so we can be what? More comfortable for other people? That, my friend, is not healing. That is a different kind of performance with better branding. I want to be careful here because softness itself isn't the problem. Genuine softness, the kind that comes from actually feeling safe and being in a safe space, is a gift. It's real, it's lovely, and it's a beautiful goal to have. But there's this other kind of softness that I am trying to highlight here. And it's the kind where you're performing because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. Okay. And that kind of softness comes from the belief that your anger will make people leave, or it'll make something bad happen. And often this belief comes from some lived experience. There's also the belief that your directness will be labeled as aggressive. We see this a lot, especially with Black women. There's the horrible racist stereotype of the angry Black woman. There's also this belief that if you take up too much space, you'll be too much. I was always too tall, too loud, too much, right? So my version of getting by in some spaces was to soften things, and quite honestly, to literally shrink my body size to actually slouch. I'm still dealing with that today. Like, I still have to remind myself to stand up, put my shoulders back. All of this is not regulation. It really is fawning with a wellness filter on top. And here's how you can tell the difference. And I want to share this with you so that you can tell the difference in yourself. So ask yourself in those moments where you are feeling like this softness come on, it's like, ask yourself, am I being soft because I feel safe, or am I being soft because I'm scared? Because those two things can actually look identical from the outside. It's a calm voice, it's a measured response, it's thoughtful word choice, but inside, one of them feels like ease and the other one feels like you're holding your breath. A lot of us have spent actual years holding our breath and calling it healing. So let's talk a little bit about anger, boundaries, and power as regulation. If you've read my book, you know that I talk highly of anger because it's my belief that anger is one of those emotions that shows us exactly where a boundary has been crossed. And we didn't realize that it was a boundary for us before. Such good information. And anger has a real PR problem in healing spaces. Anger gets coded as unprocessed, immature, something to be metabolized and released until you arrive at understanding, forgiveness, compassion. And we have some really bad examples of anger. We have explosive anger coming out of the White House, for example. When somebody doesn't get his way, he stomps his foot and does bad things to make you pay attention. We're not talking about that kind of anger. That's unregulated. That is unhealed, toxic anger and masculinity. I know you are someone who does the work. And so I'm talking to you specifically. Anger is a boundary. Like I said, it shows us where those boundaries are that we may not have known they existed before. It's your nerves saying this is not okay. Your nervous system says, I'm hurt or I could be hurt. It is one of the clearest and cleanest signals that our body can send to us. So when you see a toddler in chief doing something horrible, like bombing a foreign country in the middle of the night, and you get angry, that anger is sacred and holy and natural and normal. Because what your nervous system and your energetic body are saying, they're saying, this is not okay. This is not okay for me. This is not okay for the people that are being directly impacted by this, because you have empathy. And someone who gets angry or sad for someone else because they have that empathy, that's a beautiful example of healing. We're looking beyond ourselves. When you get angry, I invite you to pay attention to it. Ask it what it's really angry about, what it's really afraid of. Because so much of anger is actually a fear or even a sadness. There's some sort of loss. Anticipatory grief can be an anger. And when you rush to get past it, when we treat it like a phase to move through rather than some information to actually listen to, we lose something important. Healthy anger is not rage that destroys. It's actually energy and rage that protects. I'm going to bring forth the image of Kali. Kali is the great destroyer goddess, and she destroys and creates through fire. Her fire is creative fire. She may burn everything down in your life, but it's all for the good, right? The same goes for boundaries. We talk about boundaries in the wellness space a lot. But I notice that we still flinch when someone actually enforces one. Or we feel weird trying to enforce our own. So when someone says no without softening it, and it's just no, when someone ends a relationship without a long explanation, when someone stops making themselves available and doesn't apologize for it, these real boundaries are not gentle. And often boundaries are not gentle, but they are clear. And that clarity, that clearness can feel harsh to people who are counting on your ambiguity. I could just kind of tiptoe around this. But when you have that clarity, then you can have regulation, and your system knows what it needs and is acting on it. And this is just another form of self-trust, my friends. Your anger is not something to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with your anger. You're not broken because you're angry. You're angry because you're human and somebody violated a boundary. Simple as that. So let's rewrite what healed actually looks like. First of all, healing is a journey. Like, I don't know that anyone has ever been fully healed. It is a continual pursuit of being just a little bit better today than you were yesterday. And healing is not necessarily quiet or gracious. Sometimes it looks like an emotion-filled explosion. And that's okay, because I really believe that being healed or healing looks really different for everyone. Here's what I believe it includes. It includes being able to feel your anger and decide what to do with it. Right? Really feel it and then decide what to do with it. So you're not bypassing it. You're not being ruled by it either, but you're actually allowing it to exist and flow through you. And then you're giving it a voice so that you can act on it. I think it also includes saying no to things that cost you too much without a paragraph of explanation. No is a complete sentence, my friend. It includes being a little harder to manipulate, a little less available to people who've shown you who they are. I am all for forgiveness, but you do not have to forget what somebody did to you. And some of the wellness gurus out there would disagree with me, but they can. It's fine. It looks also like being a little more unwilling to disappoint someone rather than abandoning yourself. So being a little more willing to disappoint others. Like, I would rather be happy with myself and be approving of myself than worry about disapproving others. And it takes time to get there. It really does. It includes trusting your own read of a situation, your own take. It's tapping into that self-trust that I've talked about so many times here on the podcast. Even when somebody is trying to convince you that your nervous system is the problem, or you're wrong, or you just imagined it, or things didn't happen that way, that's gaslighting, my friend. Healing doesn't mean you're at peace with everything that had happened to you or everything that is happening around you. It might just mean that you've stopped pretending that you're at peace. That's healing as fuck. It might mean that you can walk into a hard conversation without dissociating, that you can be angry without it taking you out for 3 days, or you can feel uncomfortable without immediately trying to numb it. That's not soft, but it is safe. And when you're safe within yourself, everything changes. And it's not aesthetic, it's not pretty, it's not Instagram worthy. And a lot of people may not approve of your rage, your anger, your tears. You're feeling your feelings and then doing something about it. But it's not about them, it's about you. So this week, I'm going to offer you a different question. Instead of asking yourself, like, is my nervous system regulated? Because nervous system regulation is like a big hot topic right now for obvious reasons. I'm going to suggest that you ask yourself, am I safe? Because is my nervous system regulated is very intellectualizing. But if you say, am I safe? Your body hears that. So I invite you to, wherever you can, bring safety into your life so that you can feel what you need to feel. And even if it's like you put a timer on your phone and you're like, I'm going to sit in this anger for 10 minutes and then I am going to shake it out, or I'm going to go for a run, or I'm going to let it go. Creating that safe container to feel what you need to feel. That is a great way to facilitate your healing and to feel safe. I want you to be safe to say what you need, safe to be the full, complicated, sometimes loud version of yourself without immediately reaching for that soften button, right? Without immediately like trying to like soothe everything so everything will be fine and just kind of glaze over everything like we're all a big donut. Because you don't owe anyone a performance of your healing, but you do owe yourself the time, the love, the compassion, and the trust to create safety for yourself. And if you are in an unsafe circumstance, physically, emotionally, energetically, I invite you to reach out to resources that are there to help you. We have multiple hotlines available. Suicide hotline is one of them. Domestic abuse hotline is another of them. Please seek the help that you need so that you can feel safe. For the majority of the people listening to this podcast, I trust that you are in a situation where you are physically safe and your basic needs are taken care of. And so we're just working on some of that emotional stuff. And take this to your therapist. Talk about it with your therapist your next session. Talk about how you're working on asking yourself, am I safe? We love therapy around here. That's it for today. If this one hit somewhere specific, I'd love to hear about it. If it really made you think, I'd love to hear about it. You know where to find me. In the show notes, I've got all of the links, including the link to my Patreon, which you can join for free if you would like, or for at least $3 a month. The bottom share. You get some really great gifts from me, including my weekly tarot and astrology reading. It's very short. It's beautiful how this week's tarot card just aligned perfectly with the astrology that's coming up this week. And it does that pretty much every week. And it's just like a little paragraph, a little snippet, but you could even jot it down in your planner for the week or your journal and really sit with that and start your week off right on Sundays. Higher tiers get more benefits, including some beautiful PDFs and card spreads and all of that. So I'd love for you to join that. If you have any questions or if you have a topic suggestion for me, shoot me an email, hello@meganwinkler.com. Swing by my website, meganwinkler.com, and let me know what you think of this episode. I will chat with you soon. And until next time, my friends, stay magical.